if the federal government, if the Trump administration declares that the cartels are terrorists and they actually do start treating them like terrorists, and there will be some type of effort by the cartels to strike back at the United States, whether they be at the American people or whatever. And I think that the FBI will have or should have a significant role in wrapping up as many terrorists and as many cartel members, which would be considered terrorists, here in the United States as possible in order to protect the American people.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I hear most of the time when we talk about, or when I see the conversations on X and stuff like that about the administration calling the cartels terrorists is, oh, you don't know what the cartels will do. They'll blah, blah, blah. And it's going to be so bad. And there will be so many attacks and stuff. And I do think that there will be attempts at that. But I do think that the federal government has a pretty good line on who is and is not a criminal. And I think that the FBI can wrap them up and prevent a lot of the supposed or proposed attacks.
More of the designating them as terrorist organizations, I think that's more about federal allocation of resources, because that opens up a few more avenues for them to, like, I know on Long Island.
I think it's about airstrikes. I legit think
into Mexico?
Yes, I do.
Do you support those?
I don't know that I support it. But
I'm going to have to think about that one.
I don't know that I support it, but I do think that, look, the CIA and stuff like that has dealt with narco traffickers before.
But that's the stuff we're trying to get away from.
No, it's not.
I think that's meddling in other countries. That's not
meddling in other countries' affairs, because they're directly affecting the United States. I understand we don't want to send military into the Middle East to decide who's going to be running Syria, right? I get that. But when it comes to Mexico and on our border, and the amount of narcos that are involved in the government, how many people died before they decided that they would let a president live? Was it 36 people that the narcos killed before the president before the Shalbam got elected or whatever? So that the reason Shalbam got elected or is alive is because the narcos said, okay, we'll let this one go.
I will say that
if that's the case, then it does make sense. And that's why the United States has said, hey, we're going to go ahead and declare them terrorists. And when I say airstrikes, I don't think they're going to be going after Mexican towns. Yeah. They're going to be it's going to be people finding the actual heads of the narcos and taking them out.
I will say, you think that the media and the left has lost their mind over the course of the last month? Let Donald Trump drone a coca plant in Mexico and just sit back and watch, because people will lose their minds.
These cartels are a total powder keg on our southern border, and beyond that, our country is deeply, deeply infiltrated with all of these different cartels and gangs, and I don't know if we'll be able to stomach, if a real conflict arises, the damage that these cartels will do to not only law enforcement, but civilians, and then also the damage done in Mexico on our border. The perfect way out of this, I don't know. This needed to be nipped in the bud a lot sooner than now. Like, we're kind of really deep in the game of Mexico essentially being a narco state. They're not really run by their government. Their institutions are very weak compared to the
point cartels. Is, the military's on the border now. They put the Marine Corps on the border right now. Like, they're actual Marines, and they have a green light to engage should they be engaged by the cartels. It used to be where if the cartels shot, the Border Patrol had to get, duck and cover and don't return fire. The Marines are there.
So I'm more worried about that.
I'm more worried about armed pro, but I've heard some stories in Mexico. It's like when you abduct one of these guys' sons, then the cartel punishes you by abducting, I don't know, the whole local government and all of their families and children, and then they end up releasing the
that was the reason. That was the reason I brought up the FBI and the FBI's. Does the FBI have the ability to actually wrap up? You said yourself, there's a bunch of narcos in the U.S. Does the FBI have the ability to find these people and protect the American people?
But do we want, not without regime change and taking over Mexico and literally nation building in Mexico? Then no. There's not a way to deal with this unless we were knee deep, even deeper in Mexico, because the second they leave, it'll continue to just be a narco state.
When you have to
occupy Mexico, if we wanted to do that. And I don't think that's something we want to do.
There's 100,000 Americans that have died a year from fentanyl and stuff like that. So do we just say, well, there's narcos and that's just the way that it is now?
Every overdose death is tragic, but I think it's distinct from a casualty from being shot up by a...
No,
but
I
like
think I think it's so different. It's not an overdose. It's a poisoning. And that's the difference because nobody, some guy goes out to a nightclub, takes too much stuff, ends up overdosing. That's an accident. Nobody is out there looking for the crap that's on the streets, right?
Dude, unfortunately, the crackheads in a lot of different areas of our country are looking for the craziest fentanyl. And actually, when somebody ODs on the stuff, that's actually
what's that new stuff they have?
It acts as like an ad to all the other crackheads. It's like, wow, he had this good stuff.
I get what you're saying, but that doesn't really answer my question. So I'm going to go to Mary. Mary, do you think that it should be that the U.S. should do nothing because the cartels are too dangerous? Because that's essentially the argument being made here. It's too dangerous to actually take the fight to the cartels because you don't win if you don't take the fight to the cartels. Mm-hmm. You either take the fight to the cartels or this continues. I mean, we can build a wall and we can stop it, but like you said, Elaad, they're here in the United States. If you don't take the fight to them, you don't fix the problem. Do you think that it's too dangerous?
Is that actually the risk assessment that you're making?
I don't think the choices were between invade Mexico and nothing.
I didn't say that. I said take the fight to the cartels.
Yeah.
Well, what would that mean in your estimate?
Not drone striking them?
So possibly sending in...
I mean, it's chemical warfare, what they're doing. I agree. It's not accidental overdoses like that. It is poisoning. It's chemical warfare on the American people, and it should be met with some kind of lethal force.
The point that I'm making is we have, as a country, spent 25 years finding and dismantling terrorist organizations. The argument that's made when I say that is, you can never actually win the politics side. I don't think that we need to win the politics side. If you're sending special forces and terrorist, HRT teams and stuff in and finding the bad guys and wrapping them up. That's what they did to Noriega. That's what they did throughout the 80s and stuff. This isn't something that the United States has never done. And there were times where the violence in the United States was significantly worse. Now, granted, we might end up seeing more violence here, but you don't actually defeat an enemy by just saying it's dangerous to fight them.
Well, that's why I think that labeling them terrorist organizations is more about reallocation of resources, because I've seen many of these cartels and many of these Central American gangs. I'm talking about take over whole neighborhoods. They've taken over. We saw it with the Tren de Aragua in Colorado, Brentwood on Long Island.
That should have caused the governor to activate the National Guard and go in and take them out.
I think there's a big difference between that, which I would totally support, 100% support that, than active duty troops in.
I'm not talking about big army. I'm not talking about artillery. But when it comes to the way that you get those guys, it would be a similar thing to the way that they were dealing with terrorists overseas. It would be like, okay, they did it. I mean, dude.
Wait, I don't understand. Do you think taking out a few thousand cartel members would stop the drug trade? I mean, drug trafficking would continue. You'd have to have a sustained presence there. I don't know if troops on the ground is necessarily the answer. We need to figure out a way to embolden the Mexican government to police their country in a proper way.
Well, the first thing you need to do is get rid of the people that are making the decisions about killing Mexican politicians. If you it's
endless amounts.
I can understand what he's saying. You just keep cutting the head off.
Gangster cartel member will just fill in the place.
Because
the demand is still there.
I understand the argument that you're making, but the United States has dealt with cartels like this before.
It doesn't feel like we've dealt with cartels in the past 50, 100 years in any productive way. The war on drugs was a huge failure. Yeah, but that's like we did regime change. Is that what you want to do here?
There was no regime change to do
for Noriega. Didn't we arrest him? And
we arrested him, but we didn't have to change governments to do it. We got the government to allow us to. We worked with the governments of the government of Colombia to do it. We didn't have to go in and take out the Colombian government.
I think the big problem is that sometimes when you cut the head off the snake, somebody else just pops in.
No,
I mean, we got
cartel is never going to end. The black market here isn't going to end. You need to address the market aspect of this and the Mexican government aspect of this. It's funny because I feel like I sound like an isolationist when it comes to this point. I do not want to get into some quagmire in Mexico on our border. I feel like that would be...
But like you said, I'm more worried about the armed conflict on the border between the cartels and the Marines that are down there.
So Noriega was actually the military dictator of Panama.
That's what it was. Yes. That's why I thought it was regime change. We did regime change with Noriega.
But you mentioned.
So wait, do you want to do?
But he mentioned El Chapo, and we wrapped him up.
Yeah, but
El Chapo
it didn't change anything with El Chapo. Just another person filled his place. The drug crisis didn't end with El Chapo. It's only gotten a lot worse, actually. Arresting El Chapo, actually, some people would argue, made it a lot worse.
So long as there's a market for drugs in America, someone will get it here.
Unless the Mexican government is emboldened to actually enforce their laws, but they're not because they're a narco-state. Though I'm sure we've tried to get the Mexicans to do it, and they haven't.
Why are you sure of that?
Because administration after administration has put effort into it, but we need to incentivize their government to do it.
Do you have evidence of that, or because I'm not so sure
the Mexican government has tried. Well,
no, that the United States has tried to convince the Mexican government, because the United States has many soft power methods they could go ahead and I mean, we're talking about tariffs right now. And tariffs to that has made Mexico stand up and be like, oh, this is a problem for us. There are a lot of soft power and actual military power.
I think the Mexican government actually, I have conflicting views. It's kind of beyond of repair too at this point. I don't know where that really leaves us.
So that's to the point. So then and that's why I asked you, do you think that we should just leave it as it is?
Keep the powder keg. Don't shoot up the powder keg yet. I don't know. Let it keep accumulating. Again, there's no perfect solution here. I know a problem also that we need to consider is how China's heavily involved in this as well, because they provide many of the precursor chemicals to the Mexicans. So they're working hand in hand with these other criminals. Generally, I believe that we need a reinvigoration of the Monroe Doctrine. Trump's kind of doing some of this stuff with what we're trying to do in Panama. Maybe we can make Mexico great again as well.
It sucks because I think it would be easier to just diminish the demand in America by making things a little bit better and giving 20-somethings a purpose to live rather than going out and doing drugs all day.
I think that I
think that might be easier than fixing.
I thought you were going to say the legalization card, because many people say legalize, heroin.
Something about that don't feel right.
Look at California. I used to be a very much pro, hey, if we just decriminalize these things and stuff, that it will, it'll take care of itself. But there's a lot of things that have to happen in conjunction with that, and you're not going to get a government to say, okay, nationwide castle doctrine, and we'll decriminalize drugs, and if someone is using drugs outside of your house, you can go out there and take care of the problem yourself. And it takes that kind of it takes property rights more than just, we're going to go ahead and decriminalize drugs and then provide needles to people, because then you end up with California. Yeah, and that's clear. It's clearly a problem.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.